Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to break down a powerful system for mastering a new skill at a speed that is, well, truly astonishing. So, let me ask you a question. What if you could go from being a complete beginner to being proficient in almost any complex skill? Not in 10 years, but in just 6 months. I know, it sounds pretty much impossible, right? I thought so too, until I heard this one incredible story. So, get this is a true story about a friend of mine. She had a high school education, her English was practically non existent, and she was a busy mom. And yet, she somehow managed to accomplish in half a year what takes most people a decade of on and off studying. So, how on earth did she do it? Well, of course, I had to ask her. And she told me she used a very specific system to basically force herself to learn. She didn't have some secret genius gene or a super expensive private tutor. She just had a method. She called it the Simon Learning Method, and honestly, after seeing the results she got, I had to know everything about it. What I found was both surprising and, frankly, incredibly powerful. And it all starts with a little bit of a myth. Okay, so the first thing I have to do here is pull back the curtain a little bit, because this Simon Method, as my friend called it, isn't exactly what it seems on the surface. And here's the big reveal. There is no official Simon learning method. It turns out Nobel Prize winner Herbert Simon never actually sat down and created a step-by-step guide with this name. It seems to be a system that someone, somewhere, reverse-engineered from his groundbreaking research on how we learn. So, you might be thinking, okay, if it's basically made up, why are we even talking about it? Great question. And the answer is because the principles behind it are 100% real. They're rooted in physics and cognitive science, and they tap into the absolute core idea of Herbert Simon's entire life's work. And here is that core idea. Simon's whole thing was this concept of limited rationality, a fancy way of saying that our time and our energy are our most precious and, our most limited resources. In a world with infinite distractions, trying to do everything just guarantees you'll be mediocre at all of it. Real success, he argued, comes from focusing all of your resources on a single point. So this isn't just some learning hack, it's a profound lesson in energy management. So, this energy management system is built on two incredibly powerful scientific principles, and once you really get them, I promise you will never look at learning the same way again. Okay, let's start with what I like to call the boiling water theory. Think about mastering a skill like you're trying to boil a pot of water. A fundamental change, right? What scientists call a phase transition only happens at one very specific point. This chart right here shows the problem that almost all of us have. We study for, say, 20 minutes on Monday, and we get the water up to 50 degrees. Then we stop. What happens? By Tuesday, it's cooled right back down. We might put in a little more effort, but we keep stopping and starting. We end up spending a ton of energy, but the water, it never, ever boils. The real goal is to apply intense, continuous heat, to focus your energy relentlessly until you hit that 100-degree boiling point. That's the threshold where all those isolated facts and concepts you've been learning suddenly transform into an integrated, usable skill. All right, the second principle is all about maximizing the impact of that energy. I call it the all effect, and it's based on a really simple physics formula. Pressure equals force divided by area. Think of your total energy as your force. It's more or less constant on any given day. So when you try to learn English and programming and the ukulele and maybe sourdough baking all at the same time, well, you're spreading that force over a huge area. And the result? Very little pressure. You can't even poke through a piece of paper. But what happens when you shrink that area of application down to a single point? You become a needle, an awl. Even with the exact same amount of force, the pressure becomes absolutely immense, enough to pierce through the toughest challenges. This is the secret to breaking through those really difficult concepts. And you know what? There's hard brain science to back this up. Our brains don't actually multitask. They just switch between tasks very, very quickly. But every single time you switch, you pay what's called a cognitive switching tax. A little bit of mental energy just gets wasted reorienting to the new thing. When you focus on only one thing, you eliminate that tax completely, freeing up all your brain power for the main task at hand. So we know the why now. Concentrated, single-minded focus is the absolute key. Now let's get into the how. Let's look at the practical 3-stage plan to actually make this happen. Here's the roadmap. It unfolds in 3 distinct stages. It starts with something pretty radical. an act of quitting called strategic abandonment. Then it moves into an all-out assault on the topic, which we'll call an immersive attack. And it all finishes by seizing the threshold, breaking right through that critical barrier to mastery. Now, step 1 is the most important. And let's be honest, it's also the hardest. It's not about what you're going to do, but what you are going to stop doing. For the next 6 months, you have one core objective. Everything else, that other online course you bought, that show you're binging, even just mindless scrolling on your phone, it has to go. You are ruthlessly shrinking your focus area down to the size of a pinhead, conserving every last drop of your energy for the single most important task. So once you've cleared the decks, you launch an immersive attack. This is not about casual study, okay? This is about creating a knowledge map of your subject and just hitting it with high-frequency repetition. We're talking flashcards, practice problems, constant engagement. The goal here isn't to just get through the material. The goal is to push so hard and so fast that you break past that initial painful phase where nothing makes sense. You're trying to seize the threshold, that magic point where knowledge starts connecting automatically in your brain.
Now, let's zoom out for a second, because what we're really talking about here isn't just some clever study technique. It's a really radical philosophy of how to use our most valuable resource, our time.
See, most of us spend our lives digging dozens of shallow pits. We dig a little here, a little over there, hoping to strike it rich. But we just end up with a field full of holes and no water. The focused path says, pick one spot and dig until you hit water. Go deep, not wide. And this is the great paradox of it all. By narrowing her world to a single focus, English, for just 6 months, my friend ended up dramatically widening her world for the rest of her life. That one singular, deep achievement opened up possibilities that dabbling in 10 different things never, ever could have. In the end, what looks like a miracle from the outside is often just a product of extreme focus compounded over time. It's about choosing one thing and giving it the continuous, high-intensity energy it needs to completely transform. So I guess the only question left to ask is, what water will you boil first?